Are you looking for an adventurous summer job? Well, how about hunting invasive Burmese pythons in the Everglades? The South Florida Water Management District is paying $8.10 an hour to hunt the slithering creatures.
The Everglades in Florida were violently taken over by pythons, giant serpents swallowing wildlife whole, turning the ecosystem into a biological disaster zone and pushing the ecosystem toward collapse. In a desperate attempt to save itself, Florida launched the urgent anti-python project. But the aftermath that followed was something nobody expected. A mystery so unsettling it left experts wondering what was truly happening in the swamp. Florida Python Crisis. Florida, with its steamy subtropical climate and watery wetlands, was a biological hotspot, a place where creatures both native and non-native could easily thrive. 30 years ago, the wetlands were full of life. This warm haven, however, was also home to a quiet disaster, one that arrived not on loud ships, but in small wooden crates. It came from far away, carried by people who once treated it as a pet, and it grew into one of the state's biggest problems. In the 1970s, a strange new chapter opened in Florida.
Burmese pythons have been causing chaos throughout the Florida Everglades for years.
The enormous Burmese python, one of the world's largest snakes, was part of the exotic pet trade, an industry that treated massive reptiles like house cats. Many owners quickly realized that these enormous creatures were too difficult to care for. Unable to handle a snake that could grow over 18 feet long and weigh well over 200 pounds, they simply released it into the nearby swamps. This process was how the python, native to Southeast Asia, first found its way to the Everglades. To understand how the quiet beginnings turned into a crisis, the timeline filled in the missing pieces. The first sighting of a python was sometime between 1980 and 1990, but the population's true acceleration came from an accomplice most people would never suspect: the wind. In 1992, the monster Category 5 storm, Hurricane Andrew, swept over Florida. The hurricane destroyed buildings and shattered the narrative of the Everglades. Andrew, a powerful storm, devastated a python breeding center, leading to the release of hundreds more snakes. The gates of a natural prison were unlocked, and the pythons began to spread silently through Everglades National Park, Big Cypress National Preserve, and the surrounding areas. As the years rolled forward, the landscape began to change in ways most people didn't notice at first. 30 years ago, the Everglades was a much different place than it is today. It was a rich ecosystem where, at one time, people could go and see wildlife of all sizes. In the early 2000s, scientists confirmed the establishment of a breeding population and officially listed the pythons as an invasive species. The pythons had found a perfect home. Annalise Fussell, a master's student, noted that they seem like they were made to be in this type of environment. They were semi-aquatic, often found near or in water. They were masters of disguise, possessing cryptic coloration that made them nearly invisible. They had skin that was tan in color with dark blotches along the back and sides, resembling puzzle pieces or the markings on a giraffe. They also had a pyramid-shaped head with a dark arrowhead-shaped wedge. This stealth allowed them to become super predators in a system with no natural checks. The python was a generalist, meaning it was not dependent upon a specific prey species and targeted a wide array of taxonomic groups. This flexibility, combined with the ability to survive for long periods of time without food, turned the python into a constant, relentless hunter. With such advantages stacked in its favor, the stage of the Everglades shifted faster than anyone expected. The effect of this invasion was like a sudden, deep silence falling over the swamp. The Everglades became a ghost of its former self. Road surveys from 1996 to 1997 and from 2003 to 2011 revealed a devastating story of absence as the pythons spread. Raccoons, opossums, bobcats, rabbits, and foxes all but disappeared, showing declines from 88 to 100% in how often they were seen. Scientists swiftly hunted down marsh rabbits, which they had attempted to reintroduce to the area. The pythons emerged as the dominant predator, decimating the rabbit population in less than 11 months. The disappearance of these small mammals made native hunters, such as foxes and panthers, increasingly difficult to locate. Their absence itself is the story, one shaped by an invader few Floridians ever saw coming. Just when it appeared the Everglades had suffered enough, a new piece of information emerged, illuminating why the python's ascent was nearly unstoppable. The snake's high reproductive potential sealed the fate of the ecosystem. A typical female, which could live for 2 decades or more, produced a massive clutch of between 20 and 50 eggs every other year. Making matters worse, a decade-long study started in 2001 uncovered a new, speedier threat: hybrid pythons. Out of 400 pythons captured, 13 carried the genetic signatures of the Indian rock python, a species described as smaller and faster than the Burmese python. The crisis was evolving. Today, the battle is steep and difficult. The snakes spent most of their time in burrows or water, meaning that even seasoned herpetologists showed only 1% efficacy in detecting pythons. Due to the difficulty in locating them, experts cannot agree on the population numbers, with estimates ranging from at least 30,000 to more than 300,000. Even though more than 23 Burmese pythons have already been removed from Florida, biologists estimate this number is but a fraction of the population. The Burmese python stands today as one of the most destructive and emblematic cases of biological invasion in the modern United States. Yet even with thousands of pythons removed, the Everglades was far from safe. The hunt for a hidden giant.
The largest Burmese python ever recorded in Florida, and it was found right here in Naples by the Conservancy.
Florida had spent years trying to outsmart the Burmese python, but it often felt like playing hide-and-seek with a creature that never got tired, never ran out of hiding spots, and never wanted to be found. Much of the python's range sat in places where people could barely walk, let alone search. Because of this, trying to control their growing numbers felt like running into a wall that would not move. Every idea people tried ended up working only a little. The first simple idea was trapping, a traditional method of snake capture. Trapping meant building an inescapable funnel and a drift fence to guide the snake inside. But the land itself fought back. The dense limestone foundation of the Everglades made the necessary construction of adequate drift fences difficult. Even if a trap was built, the python, a patient ambusher, rarely moved because of its hunting habits and was therefore less likely to crawl into it. And finally, the immense area the pythons occupied undermined the utility of trying to trap them everywhere. All of these considerations made trapping feel like trying to catch a shadow with bare hands. Next, individuals resorted to their trusted companions, dogs. They suggested using detection dogs as living search engines to sniff out the hidden enemy. In 2011, an assessment compared these dog search teams to human search teams. In controlled plot searches, the dog teams were only slightly more successful compared to the humans. The thick vegetation, which reduced visibility and held odors, limited the success of both man and dog. However, the dogs were heroes in the water. In canal searches, the dog search team was significantly more successful, achieving a 92% success rate, and was capable of covering 3 times the distance of human searchers. Nevertheless, even this tool was often impractical. The danger posed to the released dogs in the Everglades, the fact that limited scent cues floated in the shallow water, and the greater cost, compared to human searchers, meant dog teams were not a widespread solution. With no successful traps and no reliable, widespread dog teams, local officials turned to the one remaining enemy large enough to fight the monster. And that enemy was people, the new predator The state launched a serious counteroffensive. Florida python hunting was something anyone willing to wrangle a massive snake could do. The pythons, as non-native invaders, were not protected. People could legally hunt them for a year on private land and on 25 state conservation areas without a permit or hunting license. The state even held a sponsored competition, the Python Challenge, which offered cash prizes to participants. The battle became a full-time job. In 2017, the Florida Water Management District created a permanent team of 50 contracted bounty hunters working alongside another 50 contractors employed by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, also called FWC. These hunters were paid an hourly wage plus a bonus based on the length of each snake removed. This FWC Python Action Team, removing invasive constrictors, called Patrick, along with the South Florida Water Management District's Python Elimination Program, called PEP, began to make a difference. As of April 2025, over 23,500 pythons had been removed from Florida's natural areas, with over 11,000 taken by the contractors since the program began in 2017. Their combined efforts gradually addressed the issue, yielding results that were too significant to overlook. But the expedition was no traditional hunt. Khalil told Field and Stream that hunters were not prepared for python hunting because it's not even close to the same thing as hunting. In traditional hunting, you're using a gun or bow to eliminate your prey from a distance. Python hunting is hands-on. You have to catch them first, then dispatch them after you have them under control. It's totally different. That difference became clear the moment hunters met the snakes directly. Though non-venomous, the pythons were still incredibly dangerous. Their bites could inflict serious damage, causing significant tissue damage and even life-threatening blood loss. Khalil's strategy was to hunt stealthily, walking slowly up to a calm snake. It's when you put your hands on them that they go ballistic. She aimed straight for the head, even if the snake was buried. Any python over 10 feet put up a stout fight. Khalil even got into trouble once with a 7-footer, which wrapped itself around her neck after she got distracted by a phone call. Anything over 14 feet was a monster in her book and required a 2-person job. She warned that if a hunter was alone and got wrapped up, the best thing to do was just let it go. The snake would generally take off because it isn't out to hurt you. You might get bitten, but you won't get eliminated. To be extra safe with the biggest snakes, she taped their mouths shut before dispatching them. Adding a final unsettling layer to the battle was the food chain. Some hunters made snakeskin products from the carcasses, and the eggs were edible. However, eating the meat itself was not recommended. Scientists like Dr. David Krabenhoft of the U.S. Geological Survey discovered dangerously high levels of mercury in the pythons due to bioaccumulation. But none of this compared to what the pythons were doing to the Everglades itself. The monsters that ate the Everglades. The Burmese pythons proved they were not just pests, but highly adaptable generalist predators. They were nature's eating machines, famous for swallowing meals equal to their body mass. Since they had no natural predators in the Everglades, the pythons were free to prey on everything, from birds and raccoons to large reptiles and fully grown deer. Scientists often found a shocking list of prey in their stomachs during a necropsy, including birds, various mammals, reptiles, and even protected animals like the threatened wood stork and the endangered Key Largo woodrat. The discovery of a giant female python shocked researchers again, proving the snakes were overachievers that sometimes tested the limits of their anatomy. One huge Burmese python, measuring nearly 18 feet and weighing 215 pounds, carried a record number of 122 eggs, demonstrating that she was a highly reproductively active female. After its capture, a necropsy was performed, which was when scientists carefully opened the snake to study what was inside its stomach. This specific snake's last meal was likely a white-tailed deer, as the researchers found hoof cores in her digestive tract. This finding connected directly to a pattern scientists had seen before, one that kept pushing the boundaries of what these snakes could do. Ian Bartoszek, a wildlife biologist, was once again at the forefront of these shocking discoveries.
Rattlesnakes to pythons, biologists at the Conservancy of Southwest Florida believe one of their scout Burmese pythons.
He once captured a 31.5-pound snake that had swallowed a 35-pound deer, which was the largest prey-python size ratio ever recorded. Bartoszek explained that people were often surprised when they learned what the giant snakes were capable of. "It's not just rabbits and mice they're eating," he said. "They might start off that way, but early on they become big game hunters." Another python, measuring 14.8 feet long and weighing 115 pounds, was found actively feasting on a white-tailed deer that weighed 76.9 pounds. Bartoszek described the moment. "It felt like we were literally catching the unstoppable predator in the act, and it was intense to observe in real time. The huge meal made the python open its mouth almost as wide as it possibly could." A study by the University of Cincinnati later revealed how the pythons managed this. The snakes had extra stretchy skin between their jaws that allowed them to ingest prey 4 to 6 times larger than what a similarly sized snake could swallow. The scientists realized this python's powerful jaws challenged everything they thought they knew about the species' physical limits. This incredible size and ability meant that the native wildlife are in trouble, according to Kenneth Crisco, a herpetology collection manager. Another terrifying warning about the threat facing the Everglades was provided by the python's amazing power, which looked wild, almost like a moment from another time. Faced with creatures that pushed the boundaries of nature itself, scientists knew they had only scratched the surface, and their search for answers had to go deeper. The snakes that refused to stay lost. As the pythons continued their silent conquest, scientists raced to understand the enemy. Researchers used 2 main tools to map the python's secret war: capture analysis and radiotelemetry. Since the breeding population was recognized, scientists carefully noted the capture history, weight, and gut contents of every snake. With more than 2,000 pythons, including giant adults over 17 feet 6 inches, captured since 2005. The scientists also used small, surgically implanted radio transmitters to track captured and released snakes over long periods. This radiotelemetry revealed a startling fact in 2014. The Burmese pythons seem to possess navigational map and compass senses. Researchers displaced 12 adult pythons from their initial locations. 5 of the 6 snakes that were moved 13 to 22 miles away showed oriented movement, managing to return to within 3 miles of where they started. This powerful homing ability was an additional factor that had to be considered in predicting the snake's future spread. Adding to the worries, pythons carried a tiny, unseen hitchhiker from Southeast Asia, a parasitic disease called Rhyliatiella orientalis. This parasite began infesting other Florida reptiles, meaning the pythons were eating the native animals and making them sick, too. The biggest question, however, was about the weather. Could the pythons leave Florida and spread across the southern United States? In 2008, one group of scientists from the U.S., the Geological Survey, also called USGS, created a projected range map, suggesting that the snakes could potentially flourish in as much as a third of the continental U.S. by the end of the 21st century. However, another study argued that climate extremes limited the python's range to only southern Florida and extreme South Texas. Other reputable herpetologists weighed in, with Dr. Brady Barr saying, "Climate data reveal that temperatures found in southern Florida simply are not conducive to the long-term survival of large tropical snakes. These snakes vanished when the weather turned cold. To make things even more confusing, the cold itself became a test in January 2010. When a severe freeze hit the southeastern U.S., dead snakes were found coiled along canal banks. Yet, many snakes survived, perhaps by seeking shelter underground. Should these behaviors persist, the cold spell could have acted as a catalyst for the selection of more resilient pythons. A study in 2018 indicated that the surviving snakes had changes in their genes linked to things like temperature and organ growth, traits that would help them continue to digest food during colder periods. This suggested the creation of a new, hardier population of pythons with an enhanced ability to spread northwards. And as scientists struggled to keep up with these changes, a much larger and more troubling story was beginning to unfold. A story that would reveal just how deeply the invaders were reshaping the Everglades itself, the unraveling web, and the long war. The Burmese python had not only hunted the Everglades, but had also radically altered the terrain, transforming it into a battleground that was silent. In the roughly 40 years since the python's arrival, medium-sized mammals had declined by more than 90%, a drop so sharp it felt unreal. As this loss deepened, the Everglades had watched its wildlife fade almost entirely, with raccoons falling by 99.3%, opossums declining by 98.9%, and bobcats shrinking by 87.5%. Linked to this collapse, marsh rabbits, cottontail rabbits, and foxes were now considered eliminated. Locally extinct in most places, the python had successfully taken over. With this destruction spreading through the food web, attention shifted toward possible solutions. Biocontrol had once stepped into the conversation as a possible answer to the crisis, standing like a mysterious magician whose tricks could quickly backfire. Scientists had talked about using a virus, parasite, or bacterium that attacked only pythons. Yet even after that idea surfaced, the Everglades remained too delicate to risk an accident that could harm other species. Because of this, the idea needed more study before anyone dared to use it. Connected to this cautious thinking, another proposal appeared: bringing back native predators. Jaguars had lived in Florida during the Pleistocene, and these powerful cats could eliminate large snakes, much like how they hunted anacondas in South America. Public interest, however, leaned toward bounty hunters, and officials treated python hunts almost like community challenges. The 2013 Florida Python Challenge had gathered 1,600 people, yet only 68 snakes were caught, a result as small as a single raindrop in a storm. Subsequent hunts persisted, culminating in the 2023 event that removed 209 snakes. While these ideas moved through scientific circles, the public looked in a very different direction. Regulations moved quietly in the background, and as these rules took shape, Florida required permits and passive integrated transponder tags, also called PIT tags, for large boas and pythons to prevent more snakes from being released into the wild. On top of that, the Lacey Act made it illegal to import Burmese pythons into the United States. The animals of the Everglades continued to suffer in spite of these efforts. So now, we want to hear from you. If you lived in a place where giant invasive snakes were silently reshaping the entire ecosystem, what kind of solution would you support? Would you prefer high-tech tools, bounty hunts, or even the reintroduction of ancient predators like jaguars? And here's the big question: how do you think Florida should face a threat that refuses to back down? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.